So after not having played Ground Zeroes for the last couple of months, I hadn't really thought anymore about giving feedback, but then when the PlayStation 4 got the System Software Update 2.5, I decided to use the new feature that allows you to remap the buttons, and I was able to try out a lot of my control ideas on Ground Zeroes, and for the most part everything works really well like I thought it would, but I couldn't fix everything like the dash. I ended up having that on the right D-pad just because of some of the other things I wanted to try out, and that's just one example, but there were a few others. There's also one thing that's still bugging me because I don't like the way I explained it in the first video, and I covered the same topic again in the third video, and I still don't like the way I explained it, but it has to do with the aiming angles and all that kind of thing. When I showed this footage of Metal Gear 4, it wasn't the best choice because it wasn't a fair comparison to the footage I used from Metal Gear 5 because I wasn't aiming at a person, and I said that the aiming reticle is always in the center of the screen when you change views, but it is in Metal Gear 5 also, so I tried to go back and fix it with an annotation by saying, the reticle always points to the same spot when you switch views, but that's not accurate either. It only looks that way because I'm aiming at something far away, but when you're up close, you can see on Metal Gear 4, it does change from side to side when you switch shoulders, and you could always rely on looking directly over Snake's right or left shoulder, so that when you aim, your reticle would be on target with the enemy's head. You could really only do that accurately on Metal Gear 4 because Snake's body's in the middle of the screen, but on Metal Gear 5, since you're slightly off-centered, you have to kind of look at the outside of Snake's right arm, and you can line that up with the enemy's head or center line. That way when you aim, it should be on target with his head. So you would think that you could do the same thing on the left shoulder, but when you line it up with your arm and then aim, it's not on target like this. So I think it should be the same on both shoulders, and I would probably go with the way it looks on the right shoulder. And you can see here that the dotted line is closer to Snake's head on the right side, but it's farther away on the left side. And this dotted line is in the exact center of the screen. When you aim over the right shoulder, you can see that there's still some space left between Snake's body and the left side of the screen, but when you aim over the left shoulder, there's no space at all, and in fact it even cuts off part of his right shoulder. The easiest way to fix the problem would be just to have Snake's body in the center of the screen again, but like I've said before, I do like having a visual reminder of what shoulder I'm going to be aiming on. And you can see on Metal Gear 4 that when you aim, there's still plenty of space between Snake's body and the edge of the screen on both shoulders. It's symmetrically divided, and it's like a mirror image of each other. Another thing is when you aim in over the shoulder view and transfer to first person view, you can aim wherever you want, and it still stays pointing to the same spot you were aiming at. But on Metal Gear 5, it's very unreliable because of the lock-on that happens. You have to make sure that the aiming reticle turns red and it indicates that it's locked on, and then it will transfer to exactly where you're aiming at. One way to fix this problem is to go to your options and turn on Keep Aim Viewpoint and set it to first person view. And this makes it so that it always aims to the same spot. Even if you switch shoulders, you can actually use your shoulder now to line up at the enemy's head, and every time you aim, it's right on center. So it makes me want to use first person view all the time, but I still definitely prefer an over the shoulder view most of the time. When you're up close, you can get a better idea of what's happening. You can line Snake's head up with the enemy's head and then go directly to first person view, and it's always on target. Even if you're aiming over the left shoulder, it doesn't look like it should line up, but it still does because the viewpoint always transitions exactly to where Snake's head is. It's reliable because you don't have to worry about the lock-on effect that's happening with over the shoulder view. And this actually used to be in Metal Gear 4 also, but it worked a little differently and it didn't seem quite as sensitive, even though you can see that Snake's gun is moving a little bit when he moves past his hand. But the difference is you can aim at the enemy's head and then switch shoulders, and it doesn't try to lock onto the enemy's arm. I used to think that the aiming reticle staying in the same spot when you switch shoulders was a good thing, but now I've changed my mind because of this lock-on effect, and you can see that when you're aiming at the enemy's head and switching shoulders, the game wants to lock onto his hand sometimes, but not every time, so it's pretty unreliable. I tested out the shoulder switching with a grenade, and this seems to be perfect, where Snake's body is in the same position on both sides of the screen. The grenade arc line and the landing zone stay in almost the exact same spot, which is a good thing because I feel like it doesn't need to stay in the exact same spot. Except for when you switch shoulders when you're not readying the grenade, then it does move side to side, but that's okay. I don't feel like that's a problem. So when you're using a gun, I feel like it should be very similar to this. And just to have one more example, I'm going to show you The Last of Us real quick, and then I swear I'm done talking about this. But in this game, you can see that his body is not in the center of the screen, and you can use his right shoulder to line up with what you want to aim at, and you can do the same thing on the left shoulder. When you aim and switch shoulders, you can see that the aiming reticle switches side to side, and I think that's to maintain symmetry on both sides of the screen. There's also no lock-on effect of any kind, and that just goes to show you that you don't really need it. It wouldn't work exactly like this, obviously, because you can't see your whole body like you can on Metal Gear 5, but other than that, I think it should be very, very similar to this. All this talk about camera angles is not a waste of time, because I found this on Twitter, and the developers are actually having a discussion about the very same topic, and it doesn't seem like I'm asking for too much, because it seems like it would just be a simple setting adjustment. It's good that they're aware of it, and hopefully this video will give them a really good idea of what they should do and how to fix all the camera angle problems. It's also a good thing that the developers are looking into another way to switch weapons without the D-pad, and that means it has to be on the R1 or R2 button like it used to be, depending on what shooting controls you're using. And it's nice to know that they're at least trying things out, listening to the fans. I just hope they don't try it out and go, no, let's just go back to the D-pad only. I think you could still use the D-pad to set your favorite weapons though. So hopefully weapon switching with the shoulder button stays in the game, but I have one small request with that, and I don't want the menu to stay on the screen. You don't need two icons switching at the same time. You just need the one in the lower right hand corner of the screen, because when you're running around and you're spotting an enemy, you don't want the menu to be in your way. And the only time that the menu should stay on is when you hold down the button like this, and then you can run and switch weapons with the right stick. Unfortunately, they also pretty much confirmed that they will not be bringing back animations to have your guns or your weapons visible in your hands, and I kind of thought that might happen because it seemed like a lot to ask for, and I was right. This also means that rifle CQC would not be coming back. For Team Sneak, I feel like it actually wouldn't be good to have holdups now, because stealth camo might be a little overpowered. I'm going to miss it, but at least we can still do it in the single player. I'm also going to talk about the class system or the skill system again for the third time, just because the last video made it sound like I didn't want any customization and I just wanted a long list of skills and that kind of thing. So I just want to clarify that yes, I still do want some customization, and I know that people love to customize their character, but I just wanted to go into a few more specific details about my idea for the class system. And hopefully it's something like this, where you have a long list of preset skills for each class type, but you have at least one skill slot that you can customize that's empty, where you can put the skill of your choice, and you would also have a skill point that's reusable, and you could either use it to upgrade an existing skill temporarily for that match, one that you normally have by default in whatever class you're using, but you could also use the skill point to upgrade the customizable skill. And I think that those customizable skills might be at different levels depending on what class you have, but you could make it simple by having it at a level 1 by default, and you could use the skill point to increase it to at least level 2. So let's say the big heavy armored guy has runner level 1, and you could use your skill point to increase his running ability to level 2, and then the lightweight guys have runner level 3 by default, but they only have CQC level 1, so they could use the skill point to get their CQC up to level 2, but not to level 3. That way it doesn't defeat the purpose of having a class system. This system of having the skills already set to a certain level, along with the reusable skill point, would eliminate the need to level up your skills, and that was always a long process, so it would be nice to not have to do that, and it would allow you to have more skills available to you all at once than you ever could on MGO2, and I don't see how that wouldn't be a good thing. I always kind of wish there was at least one more skill slot on MGO2. And just real quick about the weapons, I said in the last video that the heavy armored guy would have access to shield and shotgun and that kind of thing, but to clarify, what I mean is he would still start off the match with like a basic shotgun, and then he'd have to use his GMP points to buy a more advanced shotgun. So it would be very similar to the Drebin point system on MGO2. So I've seen a lot of comments from people about the class system, and they're kind of jumping to conclusions thinking that the class system in MGO3 won't be as good as the skill system in MGO2, and I was kind of the same way at first, but if the system is designed similar to what I just described, then I think it would definitely make me happy. I'd be satisfied with that, and hopefully would make all the MGO2 fans happy also. But as you can see in the Twitter posts that you've been looking at, the developers haven't even talked about the class system yet, but they're confident in what they've done, so that's pretty encouraging. I think it would be good to have an MGO3 beta, but hopefully it would be an open beta. That way anybody can test it out, and then you get a good idea of how many people are interested in MGO3 and are the ones that know about it already. And that way you can get an idea of the kind of traffic you'll have and what the servers need to be like so that they can handle the load. I was on the MGO2 beta, and I remember it came out 2 months before the release of Metal Gear 4, and when it was over, they asked for feedback, and I wish now I would have given a little bit more feedback than I did, but I guess wasn't as picky back then as I am now. But I remember telling them that the aim was too sensitive to vertical movement when you're trying to move horizontally and vice versa. So the first thing I did when the game came out is I went online and registered my character, and I tested out the aim system, and they did exactly what I asked them to do. So I feel like I had a big part in designing the aim system of MGO2, and it's still the best aim system I've ever experienced. So if there is an MGO3 beta, I definitely want to be a part of it, and I'm sure I'd have something to say about it after I played it. And that would allow not just me, but a lot of other people to give more accurate feedback. But whether or not there is a MGO3 beta, there needs to be more promotion. It's kind of following in the same footsteps as MGO2, and you need to show off some more gameplay at least 1 or 2 more times before the game releases, because I've seen people comment and say, wait, Metal Gear Online 3, Metal Gear has an online mode? And so they still didn't even know about it until now. But at least there's plenty of interaction on Twitter with the fans, so I can appreciate that. It's just too bad that most of the time the responses are, we can't talk about that, and I understand that's probably because a lot of things are not finalized yet, so you don't really know what to say, or some other reason why you can't talk about it. So I'm looking forward to the next time you can show the game off and talk about it more. When I heard about Kojima Productions separating from Konami after the completion of Metal Gear 5, which is not supposed to happen until I think sometime in December, I was a little concerned though that if the game needs patching after it launches, that there wouldn't be anybody around to do that, but they should have a few months to make sure everything's okay. But I'm sure they want to make sure everything's perfect before it launches, which would be awesome, because I remember Metal Gear 4 didn't need any patching when it was released, so hopefully that happens with this game. So that was part of my motivation for making this video. I just wanted to make 100% sure that they knew exactly what I was talking about with certain issues like the aiming angles and all that stuff. In regards to the single player anyway, because I'm not too worried about it with MGO3. I know that the developers are going to patch it, support it for a while after it launches, and hopefully for at least 4 years like MGO2. That also got me thinking about the Fox engine, and if Kojima Productions is still able to use it or have to pay licensing fees to use their own game engine. That would kind of suck, but I was also wondering about what's going to happen with Silent Hills. I've been a survival horror fan for a while. I just never really played the Silent Hill games and wasn't really that interested in them for some reason, but when I found out that Kojima Productions was developing it, then I was definitely interested. I remember seeing that Kojima Productions is still going to be hired as outside contractors, so hopefully that means that they're still involved with Silent Hills, because I would love to see them make it, especially on the Fox engine. I think that is a guarantee anyway, no matter who develops it, because I'm sure Konami has the rights to the Fox engine since they paid for it. In my opinion, it really is the best game engine out there right now. I mean, it's the only engine that can render a highly detailed open world in 1080p and a steady 60 frames a second on the PlayStation 4. Metal Gear Rising is another game I want to play a sequel to, but I don't know if Platinum Games is going to develop again or Konami is just going to have a new development team make it instead, but I'm really interested in that kind of game. So I think it's pretty safe to say that you may never see another game of Metal Gear 5's magnitude just because it's taking so long and so much money to make. And when I heard that Kojima said that this will be the greatest game he's ever directed, that brought a big smile to my face, because I know it's going to be one epic masterpiece. I mean, all the Metal Gear games can be considered a masterpiece, but I know that this one is going to be especially amazing, but You know, Kojima Productions has made some of my all-time favorite games, and Metal Gear is my favorite franchise. And MGO 2 was the most addicting online game I've ever played, and now I don't really care about playing anything else online. I've kind of been spoiled. So I'd just like to say to Kojima Productions, thank you for making so many great games for all these years, and I wish you the best of luck on whatever projects you have in the future. It's nice to finally have a release date, and I can't believe it's almost here, and I'm sure I'll get years of enjoyment out of Metal Gear 5. Well, that's it for this video, so thanks to everyone who's watching.